Okay. All right. We're coming to order for the Environmental Advisory Council meeting for June 6, 2023. Chairperson Kate Schlott is here. Katie? Are you present?
I'm present. Sorry.
Okay.
I don't know.
And Nick?
Nick Tedrow, present. I don't know
All right.
what you'll say.
Well, welcome. So I have a couple of follow-up agendas, couple of follow-up items on the agenda today. So we have a follow-up to the Village Fair booth, Trees for Tribs application, and concerns regarding invasive species. So first on the agenda would be the Village Fair booth. The village and the town EACs are doing a joint booth at the Village Fair. I'm going to be there from 2 to 5 on Saturday, and I'm going to help with breakdown. So Katie, I saw that you have signed up for 12 to 2. I don't know if you are available on Saturday at any point, but there's still a spot open for helping to set up and for afternoon shifts if you're able to make it. If not, it's not a big deal. We have 2 people at least to cover the booth.
Yeah, I'll be there. I'll be tabling for Sustainable Westchester in the morning. So I'll be there for setup, and I could probably help us set up, I'm guessing, or do some either early or late morning stuff.
All right, yeah, I think early morning stuff. I believe that a couple of people from the town EAC are going to be there to set up in the morning. And we at least have enough people to cover the booth throughout the day. I did have, oh, here we go. Just to give everyone a heads up of what's going to happen at the town and village EAC booth on Saturday. Mitzi Elks, the chairperson of the town EAC, was able to borrow an Enviroscape from T-Town. So we're going to have one of those at the booth. We're going to use that to draw people in and talk to them about different environmental concerns around the town and the village. They're also going to have one-pagers in English and Spanish that talk about the different things that are going on around the village concerning environmental issues. They do plan on having an Eco Bags Children's Corner. They did this last time in 2019 when we did the last tabling for an EAC. So they'll usually have like kids come over, do some kid activities, and then they get a souvenir bag as a part of the activity. And then I don't know if they're still going to do the donated plants for a raffle, but that's something that they had listed as a to be determined. And they are trying to put together a questionnaire for people as they're coming in and out and talking to reps at the booth. So that's just a general overview of what Saturday's plans are, what you can expect when you get there, and what kind of responsibilities the attendees would have. Do you have questions? Because Katie, I know you're going to be there. Do you have any particular questions about what you might need to do or who to talk to?
One question I had, it looks like the 3 folks from 9 to 12, are they all, they're all town EAC members, right?
Yes.
Do you have any need do we want village folk there too? If we could.
I can ask Mitzi, but I'm sure that the more help they can have, they would appreciate it. I would go in when I can't go in the morning this year. Last time I did it, I was there all day. It's a lot of fun, but I can let Mitzi know if there's a particular time. I believe she opened it up so that you can add in your name. But if not, I could go in.
Okay.
What's that like?
I just requested access to the sign-up sheet, the Google sheet.
Okay.
Which
I had been asked to help my church table at the Mount Kisco Pride Picnic, which covers the exact same time. If it'd be useful for me to switch earlier, I could do that. Otherwise, I'll just tell them no.
I think right now where the times are, we can just leave those set, because I think at the last minute now to switch around might be a little too hectic.
It's cool. I'll just stick with what I was. Yeah.
Okay.
I have to tell some people no.
I hear no is a complete sentence. I'm working on it myself. The next item was the Trees for Tribs application. This is something, Jamie, that I've been working with Maddie on. So I've spoken with Dana and Maddie about this actually a few months ago because we missed the March deadline. But I did the training webinar with Hudson River Watershed Alliance that they partnered with the Department of Environmental Conservation for this application. So right now I need to follow up with Dana and Maddie about the site that we might want to put in for the application. We had discussed the possibility of doing the area along Dale Avenue Park because it met the requirements for the Trees for Tribs program. So that's just something as a general follow-up. That's due August 1st. So I'm going to reach out to Maddie when she gets back from vacation so that we can get the paperwork rolling on that. That's something that we're still considering doing. And then continuing business, C, community concerns regarding invasive species. So at Earth Day, a few people from the community stopped by our booth and said that some of the concerns that they had was how we're dealing with the spread of invasive species in the village. There's nothing really on the record to say like, this is exactly what you should do. So it kind of got me thinking about the possibility of putting together some sort of an invasive species mitigation plan that we could at least share with residents in the village. Not something that's a formal plan through the village itself, but at least if people have questions of what they could do on their property, of how to control the spread of certain plants or certain types of bugs, that they have some sort of a information reference that they can refer to on the village website. So I did start doing some preliminary research to focus on a few key species. So I'll circulate a Google Docs to show you what I've pulled up and the website links that we can refer to. But what I actually would really need help with is putting together some sort of a PDF that we can share with residents in the village on the website. So I would ask if someone can help volunteer a few hours so that we can put that together and then get that uploaded through the EAC village links.
Might I suggest also, you know, a lot of people don't know what invasive species are or what types of what is considered an invasive species. We have there's some good websites like the Hudson Valley Prism. I could send you some links that you might want to, you know, also identify. And then I know the town of Ossining, they put together a really nice thing for landscaping, like for their BAR to specifically identify like certain species and stuff. I can send you that stuff because that has some good resources on it that might be a benefit to you.
Yeah, that would be great. So I'll circulate what I started putting together on a Google Docs, and then we can go from there.
If you need help, I'll see what I can do.
Oh, great, thanks.
Yeah.
I'll definitely be in touch to follow up on this.
Okay.
All right. That was what I had for follow up, continuing business of the board. I don't have any other items. Did any of the applicants come yet?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, wonderful. Okay.
So it looks like, where do you want to start? I think Jamie mentioned we have Riverwalk or 14 Church. Both those applicants are available. Why don't we do 14 Church first? Because I think that will be a more simpler LWRP review.
Yeah.
Hello, good evening.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. How are you, Jorge?
Very good. So 14 Church Street is a second floor. It's a third floor addition to an existing building. So a site plan, or we're not doing anything as site plan goes, we should add into the top floor of the existing building. And we're in the process of getting planning board approval for that.
So why don't I why don't I take a step back? So I don't know, when was the last time the EAC undertook an LWRP review?
I'm sorry, hold on, I haven't.
It's been a while, Valerie.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think, so what I think probably the best to do is, JB, why don't you present the project? And maybe show the plans if that's possible. And then, I think I sent everybody the LWRP checklist and how the applicant has responded to how the policies are either applicable, not applicable, or are going to be affected by the project. And then we can kind of, the EAC then can review the LWRP policies and then make a recommendation whether you find this particular project consistent with the LWRP. This project fell into the LWRP because of its location and the fact that it's not a type 2 under seeker, meaning that New York State environmental regulations a type 2 basically is a project that the state views as not having any potential significant adverse impact. This project fell as under an unlisted action, which means that it does need some sort of environmental review because of the overall scope of the project. Not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily mean that this project will have an adverse significant environmental impact. It's just that if the scope of the project does not put it into that type 2 category where the state views it as not having any potential impacts. Okay, JB.
Okay, so this project is 14 Church Street. There's an existing building that occupies most of the property. And what we are doing with the project is we add in 4 apartments, or we add in a level on the top. If you go down to the next, in this drawing we show, this is showing the layout of the project. We have, again, we using the same entrance that is now. We add in, we modifying the stairs. We are keeping the garbage containers and everything inside the building now, and that will be taken out when delivery is being done. We did provide a logistics plan for the planning board that shows that we're gonna be using the front of the building temporarily while we do the construction. If you go down, this is showing that we comply with all the top drawing you see. Oh, I'm sorry. Go down. And here you see the before and after. We're still working with the ARB and planning board as to the looks of the building, and some modifications are being done. But the brick portion of the building is the existing 2-story, and we add in again, we add in 1 more story on top. Next. That's the side of the building, and before and after, with the floor being added. And there is an overhang at the rear of the building. If you want to go back to the site plan on the top. One more. Here is a combination. Oh, there you go. Again, there's a little alley in the back. It's currently made, it's mostly concrete sidewalk. and then access to the rear of the current apartments. And we're not changing that, and also we're not changing the front entry of the building. Not sure. And I think the less, Jamie, the less picture shows a 3D of what was currently proposed at the time. That is those pictures of the existing neighborhood, picture of the existing building. And there you go. And this is a picture, a 3D of what we are proposing. There is no new stormwater proposed. There is no, we're not increasing the impervious areas of the building here.
Do you have any place to put a bike rack?
The building, unless we put in the rear of the property, but then the little alleyway in the rear, it will be the only way to do it. It will be put it like that, and they will have to bring it through the hallway out to the street.
Okay. I don't have any questions at the moment. I know that we had actually reviewed this back in June of 2020. So I know some of what we had discussed back then, it looks like you had incorporated into what you've presented now. So at the moment, I don't have any follow-up questions. Does anybody else on the council have any questions for Jorge?
Has the incorporation of solar panels been discussed or considered at any point?
No, we can bring that up to the client, but at this point, he has not explored the possibility.
It would be a useful thing to explore.
Okay.
I'm trying to find a way to shoehorn some more trees or greenery in this, and it looks like from the nature of the site, that's just not a possibility. Is that correct, Jorge?
Yes.
From a sustainability standpoint, putting more housing in this location is a real plus, especially one that's so much that is in keeping with the, sensitive to the height and everything of the neighborhood. I don't know if that's my role to say that, but from an environmental standpoint, it has some pluses.
Okay.
So if there's no more questions, I think the committee can start looking at the LWRP policies. I have them available if you need me to share my screen, or I don't know if you have them available.
I received the one for the next applicant. I don't have the one for 14 Church.
Sure.
Yeah, Valerie, if you have it, can you share?
Yep, I'm gonna do that right now. Okay, so the applicant, and you'll see throughout all of the policies, the applicant finds that these policies are not applicable to this particular project. So that's something for this board to decide. So the first group of policies, which are like number 1, are really focused about restoring and revitalizing deteriorated, utilized like waterfront areas. I mean, I can read the policies, or if we want to just, I don't know how you want to run the meeting, Kate.
I mean, I'm familiar with the policies. I was actually looking at the WRP list when we first got the applications. And I really appreciate that this was filled out as well, because I was kind of guessing on some of it. So this is helping to clarify a few questions I had. I guess for other people, is the rest of the council aware of how the LWRP works? Because it's going to be, there's 7 pages of information that we can go through, and if there's anything in particular, because I know that some of this deals with other parts of the Crescent that aren't part of this project, and some of these will deal with issues along the waterfront with Sing Sing and Sparta. So I know definitely the things that don't apply to the applicant we can move past, but I guess we should look through each page for everyone so that we can, in case people aren't familiar with what it would look like.
I was looking at the first page, and the one that potentially could be applicable, I think, would be 1B.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it is involving, and it is, while it's not on the Crescent, it's directly opposite it. I don't know if that would exclude that 1B from being applicable, if it includes adjacent as well as contiguous.
No, I mean, I think it could be applicable, and if it is, then the question then comes into play as to whether it's whether the EAC finds it consistent, the proposed project consistent with the LWRP. If you were to find it not consistent with the LWRP policy, then you can identify things that might make it consistent. Or, if you really felt that a particular policy was not consistent with that, then that could be a recommendation back to the planning board that you find that policy not consistent.
Okay, but I think it definitely is applicable. Based on my knowledge of the LWRP process, I don't see anything inconsistent. There may be others who are more cognizant of what's involved and might have another view, but I think it's applicable and not inconsistent.
I'm just looking at the list on my end.
Should we go to the next page?
Yeah, we can go to the next page. I'm looking at, I don't see anything else on page 1 that I think is an issue. No, those aren't.
Right, these
Yeah,
deal with a
these-
lot of flooding and a lot of in-water policies.
I think we go to the next page.
One thing, Jamie, it looks like Dana White is here now as I think on the other side. So if you could bring her over, it might help.
I don't think any of these apply.
Yeah, this deals with more like erosion, construction activities.
And they're not disturbing anything new. Everything's already built on the property, so
that's
it's not
correct.
like
That's
I think-
correct.
The next page.
And this deals with more public access to parks and recreation.
Yeah, these don't look
Shoreline.
applicable. Next page.
And again,
Well,
some
I
of this
think-
deals, we're good.
Yeah, I think we're good. We're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm curious about item 34, which is on page 6. I may be ahead of you, I don't know.
Yeah. We're here.
Discharge of waste materials into coastal waters from vessels will be limited so as to protect significant fish and wildlife habitats, recreational areas and water supplies. It's checked not consistent, however, I would think, unless I'm misreading this, this is actually not applicable.
Yeah, I would
So
agree
that
with
may-
that.
Yes,
A typo.
I think I think we're good on this page. Next page. Sorry about the. Yeah, I mean, it looks like everything, as far as most of the items on the list, are not applicable to this particular project. With, I guess, with the exception of the one that Katie had pointed out on the first page, which was 1B.
And actually, I'd like to add another one, and again, I
Okay.
think it's to their credit, or at least to the credit of the project. Number 5 on that page, encourage the location of development in areas where public services and facilities essential to such development are adequate. And I can't think of another spot where public services are easily any more available than at that corner. So I would say it is consistent rather than not applicable.
Number 5.
Yeah, item 5 on the first
Okay.
page. Unless there's something I'm missing, but I mean, you got a pizza restaurant right next door. What could be more essential?
I would agree that it is consistent. I mean, looking at what is required on the LWRP, and it looks like most of it's not applicable, and the things that are applicable, the applicant appears to be consistent with what is being asked from in the LWRP.
I see a hand raised. Or is that mine? I'm sorry, that's my cursor. It's me.
Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing the screen so that you can finish.
Okay. So I guess going forward, you would need to send the planning board a letter that states that you are consistent with the LWRP, and if there are any recommendations that the EAC may have, we would forward over to the planning board.
That's correct. The planning board will be, the next meeting is June 27th. And ideally, if it's possible, the planning board would like a recommendation by that.
Okay. I have started a document for any comments that might be needed for this project, so I will circulate that with the rest of the council. If you can get me something, if there are any comments that you may have, you can get them to me by the end of next week so that I can compile the letter and get it to the planning board with enough time for them to review it for their meeting on the 27th.
Just on that number 5 that we were talking about now, I'm looking in the LWRP. The last part of that explanation is new development should be designed to minimize the impact of traffic on village residents and highways, which I'm not exactly sure adding residential housing down there does or not, but if I'm reading that correctly out of the LWRP.
So are you saying that you're not sure if it's consistent with the parking or which number is that again? Number 5?
Yeah, I'm just looking in the LWRP document itself and the explanation of that policy. I think it's on share screen, I guess, too. So encourage development of public services facilities. And then I'm assuming this explanation of policy is supposed to directly correlate to the one that's underneath, usually in this document, but the last sentence is new development should be designed to minimize impacts on the community.
I understand what you're getting at with the impact of traffic.
I'm not saying it necessarily would or not, but I don't know if it's a benefit or a negative either way.
No, I know, but I also, again, it gets a little complicated because I know we have a lot of these projects that are coming up, and one of them is to directly deal with some of our parking and traffic issues. So I know that there's a plan for that to be addressed, and I don't know directly what the impact of this particular project would be on that in particular. But I know that one of the things that was stated in the application was that they would be using some of the parking from the garage that's next door to try to deal with I believe that's what it was. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one. But at least in some way to minimize some of the impact of parking. So I think in combination with the spots in the garage, but also with that project, I'm expecting that there will probably be a change in traffic patterns once those projects are seen or followed through.
Right, and I think also another thing to note is that the first couple sentences specifically focus on like some of the large remaining parcels,
Right. Yeah.
as opposed to infill development.
Right, where we already have the existing.
And the addition of what is this, 8 units is going to have minimal impact on the amount of traffic that happens at that site. And in fact, it's cited so that if the residents were fairly energetic and could walk down to the station, which is very possible, they wouldn't even need cars. So it's the kind of development that would raise very few traffic issues, both in terms of its size and in terms of its location.
Hi guys, sorry I'm late.
Hi, Dana.
What is the parking? Where are for the apartments? Where's the parking gonna go? There isn't any new parking, right?
No, there is no new parking.
Yeah, they're requesting a
So-
parking waiver.
Okay. So for those tenants that have cars, they just have to find a place for them to park somewhere.
Yes.
Which as a former Main Street resident, which is why this kind of put my antenna up a little, it's pretty insane down there parking.
Pretty hard, right?
Yeah, I used to live right there on Main Street, so.
That's what the electric bikes are for, right? Okay, well, it should be interesting. I mean, I don't know, I should know this, but I don't know what kind of overnight parking exists for the tenants on Main Street. Nick, you probably know, but
There's public lots around, so there's one public lot right there next to the post office. In that one of the 3 little sections there is a public lot, and then the farmers market is a public lot section, and then there's one over behind on Brandreth across from or like kitty corner kind of to the Books for Humanity over there tucked away.
right.
I mean, it all fills up, but there's stuff, and there's one, just up the street, kind of right next to the police station-ish, that parking lot's also.
But the open door lot is not available, right?
No,
No,
For this project. Well, hopefully people won't really have cars, maybe they don't, I don't know.
Hmm.
That'd be nice, huh? But. Let's see.
I don't have any other comments or follow-up questions. Does anyone else have any?
I'm sorry, I missed where you showed, did you show the plans for it? I'll go back and I'll watch the meeting later. I'm sorry, I'm late. But it's gonna be 8 new apartments on a new story on the existing 14 Church Street, right? You're gonna put,
it's only 4 new apartments.
oh, 4 new apartments.
Yeah,
Okay.
If there are no follow-up questions or comments, I'll be sure to get that letter out to the rest of the council tonight. And if there are any comments, we'll get it. You can get me any comments by Friday the 16th, so I could put the letter together and forward that over to the planning board. If that's it, thank you, Jorge, for the
All right.
presentation and following up with the project. I'm excited to see how this turns out.
thank you. Have a good night.
Great. Good night. Okay. And the applicant for Snowden Avenue is here, right?
it should be.
Okay.
Yes.
Wonderful. All right. That LWRP I do have. So I have that in front of me. So if they're ready, bring them in.
Good evening.
Hello, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good.
Good. So my name is Daniel Patrick. I'm the attorney for the applicant. I'm joined this evening by Jim Maurer. He is our project engineer. Bill Boyce, he is the landscape architect on the project. And William DeVore, he is a representative of the applicant. And I see that you have received our LWRP checklist, but just to give some frame of reference, I did put together a few slides with some visuals because we did submit a lot of information for this application. So I was hoping to kind of condense it all. So if I can share my screen, I'd be happy to kind of walk you through briefly, just an overview of the project and the site, and then we can take it from there, if possible. So let me know when you can see my screen.
I can see your screen.
So again, here's our project team. Bob Stanziel, the project architect, unfortunately is not able to make it this evening. And we're here for both the LWRP consistency review referral from the planning board, as well as our wetlands permit review, which is currently pending before the planning board as well. So brief overview, this is the existing conditions at the site. It's an approximately 5.92 acre property. It's got a little bit of frontage over here on Snowden Avenue, and also has frontage here on Van Wyck Street. As you can see, it's currently undeveloped. It's not in the best shape. There is some quite a bit of trash throughout the site. It's been kind of used as a dumping ground for years prior to our client purchasing the property and hoping to redevelop it. There's also 2 water courses going through the north side of the property here. These are creating pocket wetlands surrounding them. The wetlands are mostly unvegetated. As you can see from the pictures, they're not in great condition. They exhibit very poor drainage, and they've been largely previously disturbed with prior developments. There's been, historically, the property has been undeveloped, except for there was an automobile garage there for about 50 or 60 years. It's no longer there. There's still a number of, infrastructure items throughout the property, but overall, it's been mostly undeveloped and just not in great condition. And here's just a quick summary of what I just reiterated. We did perform a phase 1 environmental assessment review. There's 2 hazardous waste sites nearby, not at this property. 2 brownfield sites nearby, again, not at this property. But most importantly for this application, as indicated, there's solid waste and other debris throughout the property. There's storm drains discharging onto the property from off-site, both from adjacent properties and from the right of way. And there was also some semi-volatile organic compounds found in the soils, which were a result of this runoff coming from the adjacent property. So it's, the site's not in great condition, and we just, want to provide a few blown up pictures here to show you what we're working with, what we're trying to clean up here. But overall, it's not great condition. We're really hoping to revitalize this area and rejuvenate the property and redevelop it with, what here is the very high up bird's eye view of the proposed development. It is a 4-story multifamily building. We're proposing 48 residential units. As you can see, we've got access here from Van Wyck Street. The development is largely located on the eastern portion of the property. We're keeping the 3.19 acres over here for public use. It's going to be dedicated for public open space. And we are incorporating a few parking spaces in the Van Wyck cul-de-sac for public parking to access the new trailway connection that's being proposed to connect Van Wyck Street to the existing trailway system at the Crawbucky Nature Preserve. Let's see, what else do we have here? Here's a photo rendering of the proposed development as seen from just off-site from the, I guess this is the northeast of the property. As you can see, they're proposing a number of amenities for both the public and for its residents. There's gazebos, there's going to be some benches and some signage along the new trailway connection. So really it's providing a lot of public benefit and, helping to redevelop and clean up the not great condition site as it is. As indicated, we're removing a whole lot of debris and litter from the property. We are restoring and replacing some low quality wetlands. As you saw previously, there was a water course that's traversing through the property this way. As indicated, we are developing in this area, so we are proposing to relocate those wetlands. We're replacing them and we're providing much more efficient, much more healthy wetlands over here, so we can develop in this area. And we are also including significant new infrastructure for stormwater runoff and stormwater quality and quantity. So there's going to be taking the runoff that's currently coming onto the property. We're going to retain it, control it, clean it, and discharge it in accordance with the standard practices. So here's just a more colorful view of what's being proposed as far as the wetland relocation plan. As indicated, here is the trailway going through the proposed 2 wetlands. We have the project engineer and landscape architect who can certainly talk to this proposal in much more detail and give you a much more thorough review of what's actually being done from an engineering and environmental standpoint. But for all intents and purposes, we are looking to relocate these wetlands and really rejuvenate them and bring them into much better working condition. Here is cross section of what the new wetlands are proposing. Some ideas that are being considered by the planning board as part of the wetland mitigation plan that's being proposed. Here's just an overview of the existing wetlands areas, colored in yellowish orange, and then overlaid with the proposed wetlands being relocated at the proposed development here. In regards to the LWRP, we have noted just a few of the consistency items that we've found going through the LWRP itself. In addition to the 7-page table that we filled out and submitted. I think generally these ones hit pretty, pretty head on. This first one is establishing a river walk and linkages to the Edward M. Wheeler Crawbucky Nature Preserve, which we are doing. We're, as indicated, we're improving the access from Van Wyck Street to the community in that area. We are developing the upland area of Snowden into moderately low density residential uses. Now, we're not overdeveloping the site. We're not looking to develop the entire property. We're just trying to bifurcate a portion of the property off and preserve most of the property in its natural or improved conditions. And then this is just a comment noting that a number of the properties in the area are difficult to develop, but when it's done appropriately, as in this location, there is a significant public benefit that can be reaped from developing this area and keeping some of the Crawbucky Nature Preserve, preserving it and improving the access to it. We also noted a few consistency items with the comprehensive plan itself. Again, we're improving connections to and throughout the waterfront. We're completing the Riverwalk Trail. We are continuing the Riverwalk Trail. We are creating new affordable housing. There'll be, I believe, 5, I'd have to double check the number, but 5 affordable housing units being proposed as far as a part of the development. And we are maximizing opportunities to increase public access to the waterfront. So here is an excerpt from the village's waterfront access plan. This was prepared and adopted by the village itself. As you can see, this here is the property that's being proposed for redevelopment. This is what the village had intended as far as the connection to the Crawbucky Nature Preserve. We've essentially accomplished that, but we've just kind of snaked it through the property instead of going one straight line. So we do think this is very much in the village's intentions and achieves a lot of the village's goals. So we are, provided some photos here of what's being, some existing conditions, some proposed conditions, just to give you a sense of what's being, the public amenities that are being offered here. And we think this is a great application, great opportunity. So I think that kind of hits the highest points. Again, we are here to answer whatever questions you might have and walk you through any additional plans. As you know, there's a number of items that we've submitted throughout the past year plus for this application. So to the extent that we can answer questions or direct you to where some clear answers can be, we're happy to do so.
Thank you, Daniel. Actually, I looked through a lot of the documents that you submitted over the past year. I know at one point we were originally supposed to come, I think, June of 2022 or something. So there's definitely been a lot of information that's been sent our way. And I appreciate the time that you guys have taken into putting the work into doing the environmental review and everything that you filled out. I'm curious to know about the energy for the building. I know we're still currently under a moratorium for gas. So what is the property owner and manager considering doing as far as energy supply for the property?
That's a question that the architect would best answer, but my understanding is that the entire property is going to be electric. There's no gas line being proposed, of course, because of the moratorium. I don't know. I'm gonna pull out my other plans here to see if I have an answer of whether or not there's any rooftop solar being proposed, but I don't believe there are. But short answer is it's going to be all electric. That's the intentions.
I'm just going through your submitted LWRP list quickly. So if I'm quiet, I'm just reading through a few of the items. Does anyone else have any comments on this application?
Kate, did you need me to share my screen with the LWRP?
Oh, does the rest of the council need the list? I guess for now, it'll be helpful for everyone else. Not sure.
I have it up, but if
Oh, you have it? Okay.
you want to look at it collectively, that's great too.
And just before we move on, I did find the plan. It's A107 of the latest architectural plans, and there is about 1,900 square feet of area on the rooftop being preserved or reserved for solar panels. So, that's being contemplated here.
Great, thank you.
And it was in there somewhere. There's just a whole lot of information for me to dig through myself.
I have a question about item 1B. Which it concerns revitalizing the Crescent. How is this related to the revitalization of the Crescent specifically? Not that, it's necessarily a ding against the project if it isn't, but I was just curious as to why you didn't make it not applicable.
Well, geographically, we are close to the downtown historic area, and we think this is a great opportunity to, bring families and bring residents to the village, but preserving the downtown area by directing those residences to, nearby areas. We try to, answer everything to the greatest extent that we could. So that's, we didn't want to overly leave things as not applicable. We did think that, this is in accordance with the village's plans for development and directing residences.
I would read it as directly affect the Crescent and the immediate north and south. And again, not criticizing this particular development one way or the other. The aspirations are good.
Well, by the Crescent, are you talking about Upper Main Street downtown?
Yeah, I think that's what it refers to.
Because this, I don't know how this is pretty far away from there.
The thing with this site, it is very close to the Aqueduct Trail.
Mhm.
So even though it's not directly connecting to the Aqueduct Trail through what their plans have there, it is literally just not even half a block away. So it's a very easy walking trail from the site to Main Street directly. I think walking it, you could probably be there within 10 minutes.
Yeah, true. So that contributes to revitalization just through the fact that you're making it, you're going to be giving more people access to that area to do shop or do whatever.
Improving access to the Crowbucky Nature Preserve. There's all sorts of public improvements being proposed as far as, parking to provide access to the nature preserve, the trailway system that we're developing. It's really trying to enhance connectivity throughout the village itself by bridging this gap over our property.
I remember the residents of Beach Road were kind of up in arms a few years ago over some development on that side of Snowden. Have you encountered any of that?
Not yet, no. No, we've had a few public hearings before the planning board, and we'll be before the zoning board next week. We've noticed everything, but so far we've had no opposition or anything like that.
And again, 1E, I think the items 1B and 1E really were directly intended to affect the actual Crescent area and encourage more commercial activities in that area. Again, saying that it's not applicable is not a slap at this project, just that maybe it's not actually applicable, but that's just my opinion there.
I don't think it. Oh, yes, sorry.
Oh, no, this is just like a, I don't know, paperwork thing or something, but like, there's like a check under consistent yes, but then also not applicable. Is it supposed to be both like that?
Be logical, it probably should not be checked. I think I agree with your paperwork thing.
Now, is this, I remember a different project with a different architect a few years ago. Are you new owners of this property?
I'm not sure how long ago you're referring to, but I believe the owner has owned it for 3 or 4 years now.
Okay. I didn't realize you could relocate and create a wetland. So you're gonna actually,
Extensive review process. It's not an easy task, but
no, I bet, but you're gonna be building on top of an existing stream
Adjacent.
adjacent. Okay, so not on top of, all right.
I'm actually excited to see what comes of that because that looks like a very, very cool rendition of what you could do with the wetland, considering what it looks like right now and what the property looks like and everything that's there. What you're proposing for the wetland looks very exciting.
Mhm.
I think you are culverting the stream at the front of the property, correct?
Jim, do you have that answer?
Yeah, so there's a few pipes that discharge onto the site along Snowden. So we're essentially gonna pipe those into catchment and detain that stormwater and slowly release it into the stormwater collection system on site. That way it won't be directed at the building or underneath the road.
Has there been any conversation with the adjacent property owners about what to do in terms of the continuing flow, or is that just something that kind of is just going to happen and it's just more of dealing with it as it comes onto the property?
I would say as it happens, we've had some discussion with the village because one of the pipes is from the village's collection system. So they're happy to see that we're routing it in a good manner.
I can understand what Katie, what you're bringing up about the not applicable points of the review, but I have to say, I kind of appreciate the going into more detail, just to at least cover everything. So like, I do appreciate that, even though there are certain aspects that aren't directly applicable to the site, they are taking into consideration how it is going to impact the neighboring community. So that's, I think that's actually pretty
Third
good.
box that said NA, we would have checked that. We just didn't want to say, no, we're not consistent.
Yeah.
And I totally understand that,
Yeah.
that you're making the best possible statement for the project. My stance would be you don't necessarily need to borrow the glory from the Crescent, but it really doesn't hurt or help one way or the other. Back to the subject of the runoff from other areas that have pollutants that come to the site. Is that, I gather from just scanning over some of the documents, that is a significant problem that with the site as it is currently. Is that true, Jim? You're the site guy?
Correct. A lot of the debris, plastics and such is coming from the stormwater inlet on Snowden Avenue.
So some of what you're doing at the front of the site is containing and redirecting that.
Yeah, essentially we have a manhole that has a hood in it, and that hood won't allow the plastics to flow beyond it. So on a periodic basis, they can go in and remove the plastics that are coming into the system rather than just letting them flow into the nature or the environment. So it's called like a water quality snout. It's the name for it.
What's the kind of design concept around the retention ponds that are located to the west of the building. It looks like they're being treated as kind of a site amenity as well as a redeveloped wetland. Can you kind of describe those in a little bit more detail?
Yeah, correct. So they serve as dual purpose. One is a form of mitigation, as we discussed. We're taking out low resource value wetlands and restoring them with a constructed wetland. And those wetlands are going to be designed in accordance with New York State DEC standards. And that's an acceptable stormwater management practice under the regulations for, as Daniel said, for water quality and water quantity. So we'll, through evapotranspiration and other means, treat it for water quality, but also slow down the water for quantity control.
What about the site, about the trees that are being removed from the site? How will you replace them or not somewhere?
I can speak to that. So I had
Yeah,
extensive, hi, I'm Bill Boyce, I'm the landscape architect. I walked the site with Craig Stevens, and regarding removing of the trees from the site, he was pretty particular in that process. He really wanted to make sure that the value of the trees being removed was retained somehow. So he recommended contacting a logger to actually mill the wood into a usable product, rather than just discard it in a giant tub grinder. So that was pretty great of him. The list of trees that are on site include maples, oak, there's a lot of tulips, there's ash. In addition, there's a lot of invasive trees like ailanthus. And then, of course, everybody knows that ash are not, the strongest these days. They're dying in droves, the green ash. So there's about, if I remember correctly, about 186 trees that need to be removed. Those would be removed from the site, and they would be replaced with additional trees that are all native around the perimeter. The replacement trees would include river birch, red maples. There was Ilex opaca, which is an American holly. So we were pretty determined to get a native mix of trees back onto the site, favoring those. Even the flowering trees like Amelanchier canadensis and just eastern flowering dogwoods would be used rather than like a native or a non-native cherry or something in the ornamental setting. So we were pretty careful about that. The shrub layer beyond the tree layer. So currently there's really no shrub layer. It's all been pretty much decimated by deer and overrun by invasives like multiflora rose, Japanese knotweed, pokeweed, and mugwort. That's everywhere. To, if you want to start your invasive species list in town, those are your 4 top suspects there. Those, of course, would be replaced by bottlebrush buckeye. We have Cornus amomum, which is a type of dogwood shrub. It's great for habitat. We're increasing the biodiversity on site tremendously and reducing all these exotics in town that you don't want anyway. So we're actually going to be creating a seed source. So if you can clear out your exotics, birds can pick up those and vector them over to other places in Ossining. We can guarantee a gazillion seeds. So big promise there, but we can deliver on that one. So I hope that helped your question.
I think we can appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah. And Craig was great to walk the site with. He and I are kind of kindred spirits in the tree world. And we came up with 12 really awesome improvements to the plan, which center on, I guess, the really process-oriented things like remove the tree, the bare minimum of trees we have to remove now. And there was one 60-inch oak that we were able to shift a wall to retain, which is it's a heritage tree. If you have a heritage tree list, you should put it on it. It's tree number 628. it's 60 inches. It's gigantic. So we measured that. In addition to that, we identified lots of very, very valuable oaks, which are kind of a climax species over on the western side of the site, which would all be retained with this proposal on the far side of the stream, closer to the nature preserve. So back to the process thing, we would remove the trees that are, you know, within the footprint of the development and the wetlands. Most of them are overrun by extraordinary vines as well. There's kind of vines are there. There's a lot of actually, there's a lot of poison ivy, which is native and not terrible, except to humans. There's Virginia creeper, there's multiflora rose growing all over, there's some euonymus. So that would all be gone. But then he said, after we do that, we have to very carefully like look at the whole perimeter, because as you probably know, the edge condition, when you clear a forest, the trees on the edge are then vulnerable to splitting and cracking and falling over and dead wood, and that dead wood can fall on people. So then we have to take another swipe at it and double check the trees that are there, and maybe do a little bit of work on them to preserve them. So I'm very excited about this project also. It's really working in sync with nature rather than against it. So, hats off to Craig Stevens.
Thank you. That answered a lot of my questions.
You're welcome. Oh, one other suggestion, which is kind of little, but we were going to take some of the existing black locust trees and try to mill the wood for the pedestrian bridges and benches out of it on site. So it's a nice connection there. And black locust, as you know, lasts forever. Well, about 100 years. It's long enough.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
Instead of Trex.
Instead of Trex, yes.
I really like the idea of being able to do something with the wood after the trees have been removed. So that's great to hear.
Yeah. Thank you. I can elaborate a little bit on the wetlands. The wetlands as designed have basically, think of a wetland as different elevations of water. Each elevation has its own plant community. So there's the bottom area, which is generally flooded, you know, with 12 to 18 inches of water. And there's a plant community that lives in there, including the ones that float on the surface and different plants that grow in there. Then there's these side slopes that are inundated to about 6 inches regularly, and that is a whole plant community. And there's the steeper side slopes, and then there's the uplands, and then there's the transition to our work. Now, our work in the developed area for aesthetics and slope retention includes all natives on the slopes adjacent to the wetlands. But the wetlands themselves include a really diverse list of plants. If you look at Land Associates, we put it on their letterhead. I don't know what this document is called. It's the BCTC Building Edition. Could that be it, Jim? Doesn't sound like a great title.
The mitigation report is what you're looking at.
The mitigation report. So if you guys can find that and read it, you'll see, you know, the comprehensive plant lists for each of those different shelves I just described, all the way from the stream stabilization, which uses live fascines and coconut core logs adjacent to the stream to hold everything. And then the roots of the plants that are growing will hold the stream together. That includes black willow, red twig dogwoods, pussy willows, buttonbush, and then the steep slopes adjacent to the stream edge, which are really steep. We'll have American holly, which American hollies are great. Turkeys eat their berries. They're incredible. The deer don't eat them. Turkeys eat them, eat the berries. They're wind resistant. They're perfect for the site. They're about 15 feet apart through there. gray birch, eastern flowering dogwoods, musselwoods. Again, these are all native. There's a shrub layer and a ground cover layer. Right now, we have an invasive species layer and a climax forest. That's all we have. So this is an improvement. And I could go on, but you guys can all read this at your leisure. I don't want to keep you too long.
I've looked through a lot of these documents, and I have to say that I really appreciate the level of detail that you've gone into, because it's quite something.
It's our pleasure. It's what we like to do. This is a really exciting project. Like, I was lucky enough to work in the Meadowlands about 20 years ago, and we built parks through wetlands. They were all brackish, and this is a continuation of that kind of scope of work I'm very good at. And I'm, you know, with Jim from Land, this is like a dream project. Integrating the public with this, you know, open space amenity and dedicating some back to the town. It's everything. It's a great project. I wish it would happen in my town. So we should be so fortunate.
I don't have any follow-up comments or questions at the moment. When do we also need this one for June 27th? Are you going to be going back in front of the planning board?
Leave that to Daniel.
Yeah, well, that's the plan. We do have to appear before the zoning board next week. I'm assuming, well, I don't want to assume anything, but I'm hopeful that we'll be able to go back to the planning board later on this month, but I think that's going to depend on whether or not we get action taken from the zoning board next week, which could be 1 month, could be several months. I understand. We're gonna need
Okay.
a few variances here, so.
How does your board work? Just, I haven't ever appeared in front of this board. Are you an advisory board to the planning board?
Yes.
So if you
So-
guys make suggestions to our plan, or, you know, just say, hey, we love it, do more of it, that would be okay. Yeah. All right.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay,
Yes,
great.
so we are an advisory council, so after we review your case, we would write up a letter to the planning board and just let them know any kind of recommendations that we might have, or any possible concerns that if there's anything noted. And when we do the LWRP reviews, just making sure that you're consistent with the checklist. So yeah, we would just be doing an advisory letter to the planning board.
And Dan, just in terms of process, right, because they also, this also requires like a wetlands permit. So ultimately, the EAC will need to provide a recommendation for that wetlands permit as well. I know there's still some back and forth taking place with Keller Sessions and the applicant regarding the final wetlands mitigation and stuff like that. So I don't know if we want to probably have, you know, maybe come back to the EAC once that's been finalized, and then you can get like an official recommendation off of that final plan. Does that? work?
The only kind of note I'll make on that is something Jim brought up to me earlier, is they're preparing the submission for the Army Corps of Engineer review and the DEC review. So even after the planning board's review, I think there's the potential that the wetlands mitigation plan will be subject to changes. So we'd be hopeful to get some favorable recommendation tonight. And if there's any significant changes, we can come back and present them to you, or we can come give an update if necessary throughout the process. But I think the wetlands review seems like it's going to be an ongoing thing for quite some time, because it's a heavy hill we have to get over at this point.
So Kate, the EAC has a couple options, right? You could just look, you can give recommendations on both. You can write recommendations on just the LWRP tonight and then deal with the wetlands later on. So it's really up to you.
All right, then I don't want to hold up on the paperwork that if this is going to impact things moving forward as well. So I guess in the meantime, let's do the LWRP review, at least get that one done, and we can get that to the appropriate planning, getting to the planning board as soon as possible. And then I guess as you're going through the wetlands application, anything that might need to be updated, we can review as that comes through, and then we can do our recommendations based on whatever changes might come from whatever future reviews you're going through.
So why don't we plan to do, why don't we plan to, so we don't, why don't we plan to have the applicant attend the next EAC meeting as soon as like the wetlands gets finalized to a certain extent by Kellard Sessions, who will then kind of give a final sign off on the wetlands, or at least the where it is, where it is now, because I know there's still some back and forth dealing with the overall mitigation. So once that mitigation plans gets finalized, we can bring that back to the board, and then you can review that.
I think that works. Does the rest of the council feel comfortable with that? Yeah, so let's do that. And I will get the letter for the LWRP circulated. If there are any additional comments that anyone has, we can add them to the list. But I think we've discussed everything on the list, and I actually think it looks very good. And I appreciate the fact that you've gone into more detail. It may have been necessary for some of those check marks, but I think a lot of that is also just providing as much info as possible. So this is, I think the LWRP, in my opinion, at this point, looks pretty good. And if there's any comments, the rest of the council will have an opportunity to provide any.
Very well, that works for us.
Thank you. Yes.
Does anyone have any other questions or comments for Snowden Avenue?
Just that, I'm new to the council, and this is the first time I really looked at this project, but it's really exciting, and it was great hearing you all talk about the great feature of this, and learning just now scrolling through. Looking forward to go through, in full depth myself here in the next week, and excited about it just in general. So expressing that.
Yeah, we're very excited about this project too. It's, a lot of moving pieces, but I think it is a great project, and we've got a great team for it too. So we're happy to be here working through this. That's for sure.
Thank you, Daniel. William, Jim, and the other William.
Thank
I
you very
appreciate
much.
your time.
Bye.
Thank you.
Take
Take
care.
care.
So the EAC has one more application on for tonight, which is 9 Brooks Place. And let me just give you a little background with this. This particular application is before your board for wetlands. The applicants themselves, this is a little bit of more of a rushed application and putting it on your agenda because of the fact that there is some concerns with the structural integrity of some of the walls. That being said, we had our wetlands expert take a look at the project, and there are some additional items that are necessary. For sure, they want Jan would like a topographic survey, wants proposed grading plan. They want that to be a little bit more complete. They want information on the land disturbance. They want a wetland delineation, methods for providing slope stabilization, erosion and sediment control plan, construction details, construction access, and that the applicant is also responsible for assessing impacts to the wetland and buffer and providing mitigation. And then in addition, the village is in the process of notifying both the Department of Transportation as well as Westchester County of this particular project because of referral requirements associated with the project due to its location. So that being said, we wanted to get the project at least introduced to this board, the EAC tonight. If you have any questions or concerns that can get brought up, they're going to be before the planning board. So we're trying to get this moving through the process as quick as possible. But there is additional information. So you will, the applicant's here tonight to present, but don't be surprised if you're missing information because there's still some stuff coming. But because of the fact that the concern for the structural integrity we wanted to get that moving sooner than later, as opposed to waiting for a complete application.
Good evening. My name is Dustin Wheeler. I'm actually the owner, and unfortunately, my engineer had other obligations that precluded this meeting, and my contractor, we didn't get the link for the Zoom meeting until about 6:45, and so I don't think he was aware that we were actually presenting this evening. So I'll be alone on this. I'll answer as much as I can. But I'm assuming you've all maybe had a chance to at least glance at the plans that were submitted yesterday. And I'll try to just kind of introduce the base of the problem. So we purchased this house a couple of years ago, and knew that the retaining wall was in some state of disarray, but weren't aware of how bad. And we spent the last 2 years trying to find an engineer and then contractors who can do some work on this. And because we just purchased a house, we're obviously not rife with cash. And so we were trying to get multiple quotes, and it took us 18 months to get 2 quotes for the project. Over which period the deterioration continued, and we're now dealing with a wall that's in significant disrepair. I believe the last 2 pages, or the last page of the application, has the most recent photos that were taken this past weekend of the wall itself. And you can see that it's a pressure treated wood railroad tie wall, and the faces of the ties are literally just falling off the back of it. So that first page is from spring of 21. And then the page after this is from this previous Sunday. You can see that it's just got no integrity left. And so the deck is sagging. We don't really use the deck. It's still stable for 1 or 2 people, but we're obviously not going to host a group of people there. But every day that passes, it gets a little worse. And so we're trying to get the project done quickly. We are trying to make as few modifications to the back area as possible. I don't want this to turn into a giant reshaping of the slope where that wetlands. I like having that wetlands in our backyard. And most of the work is just to get construction access to the bulk of this wall. The wall itself was built before the house was put in, and then they slapped a house on top of it. And I'll be the first to say that I think that pressure treated wood was a very, very poor choice in the initial construction. But unfortunately, we're stuck with that. And in an attempt to make sure this isn't an issue 18 years from now, we're putting in segmented concrete blocks to just make sure it's stable for as long as the house is around. So that's summary of the project. What questions do you have that I might be able to discuss, or suggestions do you have for what we need to do? Obviously, there's the checklist of 10 items that Keller sent forward for us, and the engineer is in the process of addressing that. I believe he's scheduling a meeting with Jan Johansson. They've got a prior relationship for previous projects, so the engineer and the contractor, we're going to work with him on making sure that they can address all of the concerns that were brought up.
I'm just looking at the steepness of the slope.
Yep.
It's a seriously steep slope.
It is about as unpleasant a construction point as you could wish for on something like this, where there's no access to it. Obviously, the opposite side of the brook is county land for the highway. And there's houses all up and down the street. So the only access is down our driveway, which I think is like a 14-foot clearance between the house and the adjacent property. So yeah, there's not much room to work. There's not much access for large equipment, and it is a big job that wants big equipment. So the engineer and the contractor have been doing admirable work of planning ways to get this job done.
So I guess it's really more that it's about the permit for working in the wetlands
Yep.
yeah.
And so I've been a little unclear on the requirement. I've always assumed we probably needed wetlands permits, and then at some point there was some statement that because the brook is a seasonal brook, that maybe some of the wetlands requirements were not as stringent or not as necessary, but maybe that's not true. And again, I've been fuzzy on details and not gotten necessarily the same story from all the people I've asked.
I will have to double check exactly what is required for the wetlands permit on this one. The wetlands the wetlands ordinance is relatively new.
Okay.
So this would actually be one of the first applications that we're reviewing for this type of permit requirement on a residential home. So I will need to go over some of that just to refresh myself as well as we're going through all of this.
Yeah. And I would like to stress that we're really trying as hard as we can to not modify what's there already, or to modify it as little as possible. Obviously this, so there were always two walls back there. I will say that the lower wall is degraded to such a state that the surveyor didn't even bother putting it on the map. It's about 1.5 feet of stuff above the ground, but most of it is just buried under greenery back there. So we're effectively replacing two walls with two other walls. Now that the lower wall in the new plans is significantly larger, and that's just so that we can get a platform to work on the base of the upper wall and really ensure that the bulk of the slope there is shored up. But my hope in all of this is that we have as little possible change to the existing topography and everything as we can. I have no desire to extend my backyard. I enjoy not having to do much lawn care back there. And so we're really trying to keep it from impacting that lower part of the wetlands, and everything that is going to be finished and in those two terraced areas is 15 to 20 feet above where the river itself is.
How high does the brook typically come onto the property?
In the past 2 years, I've never seen it overflow the banks. If you can go to one of the full property maps, I think up a couple of pages. Let's see, this one will work. So if you look here where the brook is out at the edges, there is kind of the flattest area. So everything between pretty much where the north arrow lies and the edge of the property is relatively flat. It doesn't really start rising in grade until where that 24-inch maple is just left of the north arrow. I have never seen the brook cover that flat area. It's always stayed within the banks out in that bow. And even where it starts to bend in toward the west there in kind of the closest approach, the base of the brook there is pretty well shored up with stone and everything. Even in some of the worst thunderstorms last year, I never saw it rise up above the banks. It never approached even where the bottom of the bottom wall would sit.
Okay.
We have the existing bottom wall sitting in about that same location, and it's, as far as I know, never been wet. As you saw before, it is a very steep slope and it rises pretty quickly.
So, Valerie, I'm assuming for this property, we would, again, as we were doing with the others, that we would just be sending a letter of recommendation to the planning board
That's correct.
to recommend approving a permit and moving
That's
forward.
correct. That's correct.
would you be going in front of the planning board again this month?
That's
Or is
the
that-
goal.
that's the goal, okay.
Our hope is either to go before them or even if it's possible, expedite that and find some earlier avenue to do this, just because it's been sitting for so long and with the wet rains this spring, it looks even worse.
I'm sure
Um,
today did not help.
Yeah, and I don't think it's all gonna fall out at once and drop our house into the brook, but
It's not
who
a
knows,
problem
and I'd rather
until
not
it is.
chance it. Yeah, we have an almost 2-year-old at home, and she's just now starting to learn to open the back door. So that's been eye-opening and even more worrying.
So I think there's a couple different options the
Yeah.
EAC can consider. So this will be before the planning board, June 27th. The EAC could basically, or more or less, adjourn the applications. They come back next month with more information. The EAC could potentially provide a recommendation with conditions. And some of those conditions then would have to be met after the fact. So let's just say, for example, if you said you wanted to review the mitigation plan once that gets identified, right? We could potentially have the applicant go there knowing that that's going to be a condition of approval that the EAC has to review and give final sign off. You know, so there are some conditions. I mean, typically, you know, it's a recommendation, but because of this situation and it's so unique, that if you feel that, you know, you want to be able to give a recommendation, but still want to have that real review of the wetland mitigation plan and those comments, then, you know, that could be, you could send that over as part of your recommendation that you're recommending it, but with these conditions. And the planning board can either decide to agree and move forward with that, or they could say, no, we actually want like a recommendation without any conditions, and then the applicant can come back to you.
Does anyone else have any comments or questions before we make a decision on how we want to move forward?
I guess the pros and cons of those two approaches, in one sense, they kind of, I would think that they come to the same timeline because there still will be an additional level of review once we have the additional information. So if we approve it,
Oh,
if we
can I-
approve it, sure.
Sorry, I forgot to say that when the contractor was chatting with the gentleman from Keller, the
Keller Sessions.
Keller Sessions.
Yes, thank you. When the contractor was chatting with him, Jan said, if you can meet these 10 conditions, I'm happy to contact the planning board and say, you know, I recommend this go forward as long as these 10 things are met. And so he did express some confidence in the project and said that he was happy to send a letter to, I think, your board and the planning board stating that. So from there, and it sounds like his reservations were relatively soothed, and that he was confident that we could get all those 10 check marks, you know, covered in the next few days. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to
All right.
make sure you had that information.
That's all right. I was just trying to process what
Mhm.
the impact would be. One, you know, in one sense, in both cases, there would be a two-step process. So I'm okay either way.
Wait, I'm sorry, which page is the 10 steps or
That
the
was
10
in an
Not,
recommendations?
I have it on an
Okay.
email.
Yeah, sorry, that was an email
Okay.
from Ms. Kane today.
Yes. It's an email. We can forward the email over to you tomorrow morning, but this was sent to the applicant today. I'll share my screen and show it to you.
Okay. Yeah.
These are the 10 items.
make a comment? These, I'm sure, are things that can be easily provided. They're pretty normal. But we don't really have much to review until we have this information.
That's correct.
We are aware of the urgency of the project, and being a homeowner with retaining walls next to me, I understand how important it is to keep them in good shape. But as far as providing the kind of review we need to provide, I think until we get this information, we don't really have the ability to, we don't have much to go on. Again, that's just my take on it. So I would advocate we wait until this information comes in and then work very quickly to give a response.
Right. I mean, one of the things that, again, we can always, because the EAC doesn't have, you don't have to, your meetings can be called at any point in time. This is something that, we could work with the EAC as to when the next available time to meet, just to talk about this application.
I'm comfortable with doing that. I don't want to make you do double work and then it ends up having to come back in front of us anyway. So once that is all taken care of, I would say, shoot me an email and we can, whether it's scheduling an emergency meeting to deal with the case or come up with a letter. Once that information is received, get this done within a timely manner, considering the condition of what's happening with the deck and the property.
Okay, that helps. I was hesitant to wait another full month before moving forward on anything, but that helps. I know that we're all willing to work kind of not quite 24/7, but overtime this week to make sure that we can get this information into you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would work. Yeah.
Sounds good to me too.
Okay, I appreciate the gesture.
Yeah. Once we get it, we'll get a quick turnaround time for that so that you can get all of your stuff taken care of.
Okay. Great. Any other thoughts or recommendations?
I don't have any on my end.
Add locks on those doors.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
Luckily, she can only do levers, not knobs yet. So the interior doors are knobs.
Mine is 3 and she's getting more clever by the day.
Uh-huh. So, yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate all the feedback.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was our last application.
Okay. Well, it worked. Wow, we haven't had this many applications in a long time. Yeah, they did say that when things would pick up this year, they were really going to pick up. So, yeah, this is good. I'm excited about the Snowden Avenue project. That looks really interesting with how they're doing all that, and I think considering how the wetlands applications and the permits came about, this is really great to see the level of detail that they've gone into with that project. I know some of that has to do with some of the experience that we've had with other sites. So this is really great to see the recommendations being taken and even things being done in advance of having to recommend things to them. So that's really, really great.
Yeah, there's certainly new concepts unfamiliar to me, like green infrastructure and some things that the architect was talking about that were really interesting. Interested to learn more about going through that in more detail, that plan.
I noticed I downloaded the agenda and it's 1,224 pages.
I've been slowly reading that application over the past year. Like that was originally, I believe, like from June of 2022, maybe May. So like it's been a slow like waiting for them to come because like I've been getting increments of the application over the year. So to actually get to see the presentation, get to see what they're working on and hear them present it has been enlightening. All right, so what, I will get the letters for the planning board. So we're submitting letters for 14 Church Street. So they're gonna go back before the planning board on the 27th. So we'll get them that letter before then. And then for Snowden Avenue, we're doing the LWRP first. And then we're going to review the wetlands permit once all of that moves forward. Okay.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. So I'll get that letter circulated tomorrow and we can go from there.
All right. Excellent.
All
And if you
right.
have any other questions, you know where to reach me.
Great. Thank you, Valerie.
Valerie, a quick question about the LWRP checklist. I may be too picky by saying if it really isn't impacting the Crescent or other areas, negatively or positively, but if it actually isn't located in those areas or connected to it, then it'd be best to treat it as non-applicable, or is that something that's not worth?
Well, I think I would say if it's going to potentially be in an inconsistent view, then it really should be applicable to that particular area. So for example, if you were going to say that it's a project is inconsistent because, let's say, for example, it spoke about I don't know, like water dependent uses, but then you kind of looked at it for parks and recreation and said, well, we don't think it's consistent with this policy because the policy wants, you know, public waterfront access, then, and it has nowhere, and it's nowhere near the public waterfront, then I would say that it really should be applicable, because if you're going to give an inconsistent finding, if you're going to say that the project in spirit does meet some of the policies, falls in different locations, that you feel that they could be applicable to the location that you're looking at, like for example, one street over from the Crescent, that's fine to have that conversation and just, you know, and also know that that's potentially applicable. I think it's really, because technically it really should be based upon the description and the policy itself. But, you know, in LWRP, the whole point of it is to, you know, revitalize certain underutilized areas, to protect the environment. So if the project has those elements in it and you want to highlight that, I think that's fine. I would just be cautious that if for some reason you're going to find an inconsistent ruling on a particular policy, that you really want to make sure that that policy is applicable to the project.
Okay.
Because at that point, you're going to want to also explain why you think that project's not, you know, the project's inconsistent to that particular policy.
Mhm.
Does that explain
you.
that?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a little subjective, I would agree, when you're going through it. And that's where, I mean, but I think the questions everyone was raising tonight, I think were really good questions. And I think that helps you kind of assess whether a policy is actually applicable or not to a project.
I mean, I'm relatively new to all this still, and certainly have not gone through the 280 plus pages in great depth, you know, as of yet, but I do plan to, because that's my nature. You know, is it fine to kind of like email folks questions and thoughts about, you know, elements or interpretations of, you know, certain policies in a, you know, universal sense, necessarily not necessarily specific to particular cases, whenever people fine with that?
Yeah, and if at some point we want to go through the LWRP and just talk a little bit more about it, the village did get some funding as part of the last CFA cycle to update the LWRP. So that's something that will be forthcoming, probably not this year because they have a lot on their plate, but shortly. So, you know, a broader discussion about LWRP and updating some of those policies will take place within the next couple of years as well.
All right, that's all I have for tonight. So we went over, so I'll see you, Katie, on Saturday.
Yep.
I'll be out there as well.
Oh, great.
I'll see if there's spots to sign up still or not. I mean, I'll be out there either way,
Yeah,
but
we'll see you either way, and we'll come by at some point and say hello. We're not near each other booth wise, so definitely we'll check in with you.
Yeah, I'll bring my sunscreen. I think it's gonna be sunny.
hopefully not smoky. I did just go out there looking for my cat in a rush.
Yeah.
Dark and it was smoky right in my backyard.
Oh, not good.
No.
Does anyone have any comments or questions before we adjourn?
No, but just a reminder that next month's meeting is actually on a Thursday.
On Thursday, okay. Oh, right, because of the
Because-
holiday,
Yes, because of the holiday.
Sure.
so July 6th.
Yep.
All right.
Okay.
Oh, great. I get to go to a CAFI meeting and the EAC meeting all in one day. Very great. All right. If there are no other questions, comments, or concerns, I will move forward with saying that meeting for EAC tonight is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good
Have a
night.
good night.
Good night.